in the room. Yeah, Putin. Putin and fart. Putin and fart.
Hey,
How's my volume?
what'd you say?
How's my volume?
I can hear you.
Oh, good.
Hey y'all, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. The big day is here.
Yes, yes, yes.
Need to do something with my nails, but I'm gonna hide them.
Same. I have not been to the nail salon in forever. And I'm ashamed. And I
Going,
love to talk with my hands.
yeah, I'm going this afternoon, and I'm just gonna get a basic mani pedi.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I turned 55 this week, so I
Hey.
gotta stay glossy.
Yes.
I know that's right. Happy early birthday.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I turned Tuesday.
Oh, okay. Well, happy belated birthday then.
Thank you. Yeah, so the secret to looking young after you get over 50 is shining.
Okay.
You just gotta Vaseline, anything that shines. You just keep shining. Keep your hair looking shiny. Yeah, let me see how I really look in here. Oh, full screen. Mhm. Little post.
Hey, everybody. Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure I get everything together.
Hey,
Hello, everyone.
Hi, sorors. If
morning, sorors, afternoon. I don't know what time it is anymore.
God has put it on my heart to say a quick prayer. Amen. Father God, wait a minute. My hair just distracted me. Sorry. Father God, you are just God all the time. I thank you so much for this Sunday. Thank you for these deltas. We are just always in service, and you give us the opportunity to serve our communities. God bless this time for DEI Higher, DEI Higher, and every speaker. Just help us to say what our audience needs to hear. Help us to represent ourselves, Delta, our families in the way you want us to, and help us to walk in purpose. Each one of us has an amazing purpose, and help it to show up today. In Jesus' holy name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Well, I just want to say I am so excited because it's such an honor to be in a safe space with my sorors to have this conversation. So I just need to get that out.
Same.
Thank you.
Dang, thank you. I thought I had lost access to the event, so I was freaking out, but I was using a different uh account. And I'm like, what happened? Did somebody hack me? Like, what happened to the event? Like, I was thinking, like, the type of event this is, that could very well happen. So I'm just like, yeah. So I'm just kind of like decompressing. I'm a little nervous.
I'm nervous
You
too.
covered, sis.
I'm gonna go get it's normal to be nervous. It's gonna be amazing. I'm just 2 seconds to get my water. Be right there.
I know my chapter's having a watching party right now, and I'm like, it's not that serious, but I appreciate the support.
Oh, the
It's
support. I
that
love
serious.
that.
Let's go. My cousin texted me this morning with a screenshot. I didn't realize that I don't remember telling her about the event. She texted me this morning and was like, "Hey cousin, we got the link. The family gonna be watching." I was like, "Okay, Detroit, let's go."
Yes, exactly. All right, we ready? All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. Welcome to DEI Higher. We're here confronting attacks on diversity in higher ed. And so we're just gonna go ahead and get started. What I want to talk about first is our learning goals and outcomes. Understand the current political and social landscape surrounding DEI in higher education in the workplace. Explore the origins and impact of the DEI Higher stereotype on marginalized professionals. Gain strategies for pushing back against anti-DEI rhetoric and advocating for inclusive policies, and connect with experts and peers to share insights, challenges, and solutions for advancing equity. So whether you work in higher ed, corporate spaces, or community advocacy, this discussion will provide valuable perspectives and tools to support DEI efforts. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to DEI Higher, a critical conversation on the attacks against diversity, equity, and inclusion in higher education and beyond. I'm Caprice Risby, and I'm honored to be your host for today's discussion. As we've seen in recent years, DEI efforts have faced increasing opposition, with many questioning their necessity and impact. At the same time, Black professionals and others from historically marginalized communities have been unfairly labeled as DEI hires, undermining their qualifications and contributions. Today, we are here to challenge these narratives, share lived experiences, and explore ways to protect and strengthen DEI efforts. This webinar is brought to you by Black Girls Guide to College, a community-driven initiative dedicated to empowering Black girls on their journey to and through college. Our mission is to ensure that every Black girl feels prepared, supported, and inspired to succeed in higher education. As DEI faces growing challenges, it is critical to discuss how these issues impact Black students, faculty, and professionals. The harmful DEI hire stereotype and the broader pushback against equity efforts threaten progress, making conversations like this one more important than ever. Through this discussion, we reaffirm our commitment to advocating for inclusivity, representation, and opportunity in higher education. We're grateful to have an incredible panel of experts who will offer insight from their own journeys, and we also want to hear from you, the audience. This is a space for open, respectful dialogue, so we encourage you to engage, share your thoughts in the chat, and participate in the discussion. So before we begin, here are a few housekeeping items. Please keep yourself muted unless speaking during the Q&A. Feel free to use the chat to share reflections and questions throughout this session. We will have a dedicated Q&A toward the end, so be sure to submit your question. Approach all comments and questions with an open mind and willingness to learn. So I'm going to introduce our panelists. Dr. Thiele Thatch, founder of Thiele Thatch Consulting, is a DEI expert with over 25 years in HR, talent management, and organizational transformation. She has led initiatives for major organizations, authored the Diversity Dilemma, which I bought, and serves as faculty member and global advocate for equity and inclusion. Dr. Akia Simeon, PhD, MSW, MA, is a scholar, activist, and higher education leader committed to fostering inclusive and equitable campus communities. As Director of Fraternity and Sorority Life at the University of South Florida, she advances DEI, student engagement, and violence prevention. With a background in social work and institutional leadership, she champions equity-driven policies, student advocacy, and holistic development in higher education. Dr. Ebony M. Ramsey is a dedicated higher education leader, DEI advocate, and change agent with over 20 years of experience in student development, activism, and leadership. She has worked at multiple institutions with a passion for historically Black colleges and universities, and currently serves as Director of Research Advisory Services at EAB. As a consultant, speaker, and entrepreneur, she continues to drive equity, inclusion, and systemic change in higher education and beyond. Sharita Washington. Sharita Washington, MBA, is a DEI strategist and engagement leader with over 15 years of experience driving equity-focused initiatives across global corporations, startups, and community organizations. With expertise in communications, HR, and operations, she transforms corporate structures into inclusive, sustainable strategies. A sought-after speaker, she bridges perspectives across race, gender, and industry, ensuring DEI is a lasting competitive advantage rather than a checkbox. Sharita, I am so sorry. I do not know where your picture went, but I'm going to fix that. Dr. Willie Grant Goodman is a mental health therapist with 10 years of DEI experience and 7 years in higher education. Her work focuses on creative, inclusive spaces that promote mental well-being, particularly for marginalized communities. She is passionate about bridging mental health and DEI to foster equity and support for diverse populations. So we're going to do an activity. Read the Zoom. How it works. For each statement, participants will respond using Zoom reactions. After each reaction poll, participants can share insights in the chat. So if it's a thumbs up, it means you agree. This resonates with me. If it's a heart, I somewhat agree, but I struggle at times. And a clap, I do not agree. I need more support in this area. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I have seen the impact of DEI or the lack of it in hiring, promotions, or workplace culture. A lot of thumbs up, a lot of I agrees. Thank you. The next question. I have had to advocate for myself or others in spaces that were not inclusive. Okay, again, a lot of thumbs up. Thank you. I want to learn more about how to effectively support DEI efforts in my workplace or community. I feel supported in my DEI work at my institution or workplace. Okay, we got some claps. I do not agree. I need more support in this area. Thank you for the transparency. A heart, I somewhat agree, but I struggle at times. So I've witnessed or experienced the DEI higher stereotype in my field. Yes, plenty of yeses. Okay, thank you. I believe my institution or workplace's DEI initiatives are making a real impact. Somewhat. I feel equipped to push back against anti-DEI rhetoric in my professional or personal spaces. Okay, we have some mixes. And I have found ways to balance my personal well-being while advocating for DEI. Have some mixes. I believe we can still make meaningful progress in DEI despite current challenges. Yes. So this activity provides a visual representation of our shared experiences in DEI work. By reading the Zoom, we can better understand where we align, where challenges exist, and where more support is needed. So now we're going to get started with the panelists. I'm going to stop screen sharing so that you can see the panelists' answers. So the first question is, can you briefly share your background and what brought you to DEI work?
I don't mind taking this question first, if that's okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So excited to be in this virtual space with you all this afternoon. So I'll say that in terms of my background, I'm a mental health therapist, a speaker, a researcher. Most recently, finishing my PhD at UNCG, where I focus on the experiences of racial trauma with Black women student affairs professionals at historically white colleges, and they particularly I focus on those working in student affairs. And I feel like what really brought me to DEI work is just always been a part of who I am. So even as a young child, my parents had me watching Eyes on the Prize videos. It was just my background, even my family background, just really instilled in me the importance of advocacy. So even all the way back in the day, I didn't even have a word for what DEI was and what it actually meant, but it just makes sense that I have arrived at this place that I'm working in now. So I did leave higher ed in late 2023, and I'm full doing my mental health business full time now. Again, doing speaking and researching, and then definitely being able to engage and have important discussions like these with like-minded professionals. So definitely, again, excited to be with you all in this space this afternoon and to hear what the other panelists have to share as well.
Um, Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Grant Goodman. So Sharita Washington, I definitely want to jump into the fact that this is an amazing space to be in, and Caprice, I honor you for putting this together, especially at a time like this. So, what brought me into DEI work, if I can reverse answer the question, similar to Sora Whitley, my parents brought me up being prepared with what the world's not going to let me do. And I was the kid who like had to read Othello growing up because it was the only one about a black man when Shakespeare wrote it. And I was reading Alex Haley's Queen in fourth grade when everybody else got to read Dr. Seuss. And when I got into college, and mind you, I'm a black woman who grew up in a predominantly white city, in a very small city at that. And so when I went to college and I got into an HBCU, I got to experience what it was like to not be the only one. But the thing that didn't happen is the transition and the preparation to go back into a world that's not me, surrounded by a lot of people who look like and can relate to me. And so I feel like DEI kind of was inherently in me because I've always had to carve space for myself, and making space for me also means making space for those around me and those coming after me. So there came a point where it was coincidental, and then there came a point where I made it intentional. And so I'll say that that's where I got into DEI. The work that I do is a lot of business partnerships and advocacy work, public speaking, building programs for companies to use where we can deep dive the morale in the company, where we can deep dive the culture, because where companies have profit issues or performance issues, you probably have people issues. And so helping people understand the root cause analysis, that you got to actually understand the heart of your people and how your business is impacting them before you can change your business and hope your people can catch up. So that definitely was something that seamlessly still plays into DEI, whether you directly say it or not. Everything we all do is a reflection of DEI. So I definitely just wanted to take the bull by the horns and make sure that I control my narrative as much as possible, so it's not as hard for someone to come after me.
Wow. Well, I'd like to jump in. Thank you so much, Caprice Risby. I just like saying your full name. This is an amazing space you've created, an opportunity, a platform for us to have psychologically safe spaces. And so great seeing my sorors and other guests on the call. So briefly, my background started in the inner cities of New Jersey, East Orange and Newark, New Jersey. And I was that girl who did not believe that I could get into college. I didn't even know about historical Black colleges until I was maybe in my 30s or 40s. And those weren't, places that were introduced to me. So fast forward, I get promoted to the very top of a very famous entertainment company. And there weren't too many people that look like me. Definitely am Black, consider myself the Blackity of Black, even though I'm lighter skinned. And I just wanted to learn more about diversity for myself and for my peers who were struggling with just, promotion and fairness and equity. And I reported to mostly white people who said, don't do that. You're going to risk your career, you're going to get fired. And that made me want to do it more. So coming from the hood, I'm the type of person, if someone tells me no, I know they're telling me no. Like I see underneath all of that, because there must be a reason I need to do it. So fast forward, I was the chief diversity officer at one of the largest entertainment companies, the first. I have been in human resources for 25 years. And so what I do is I use my human resources experience to show businesses how to think about equity through hiring, promotion, performance evaluations, and performance management. I decided to get my PhD in public policy because I started to see that intersection between policy and human resources and realizing just at, late in my years that that was what we were standing on in terms of our equity and civil rights. So that's who I am. That's what I'm about. Thank you so much for having me.
So my background is in social work. So I'm like in most higher ed profession, I'm the oddball out because I'm a social worker by trade. And I got into DEI work because thinking about social work at its inception, it was very much a divisive field. Like the young social workers, the beginning social workers didn't want to serve people of color. They only wanted to provide resources and support for those who were white or as close to whiteness as possible. And so now working in higher education as an adjunct faculty, but also within student affairs, my work in DEI really is a collective kind of a mosaic of how to help get resources and supports to students, not just to tolerate those who have differences or marginalized identities, but how do we undo the fabric that is higher education today, right? Because racism, ableism, sexism, all is rooted in higher education. It's sewn into the very fabric. If we think about higher ed, it was only really truly meant for heterosexual, cisgender, white, privileged males. And now you have this kind of collection of different individuals, and you see this attack on DEI. So for me, it's always about how can I get in to create space and place, but also not having a single narrative. I teach my students yearly when I'm educating them at the institution to be careful of the single narrative. And so a lot of times when you think about DEI, that's why we are where we're at today, because there's been one-sided single narrative told, and now everybody thinks, oh, well, we don't want the minorities or anyone who's different to have anything. When in actuality, DEI benefits white women mostly in our country and has always benefited them mostly. So as a social worker, creating equity and parity in spaces where people just aren't tolerated but celebrated and elevated is why I got into this work.
Good afternoon, everyone. Caprice, thank you so much for having me, thinking about me, and even extending this opportunity. My name is Ebony Ramsey. I use she, her pronouns, and the ways in which that I've been brought into this work started pretty early for me. I was able, as a high school student, to participate in a program through the National Conference for Community and Justice. And it was a program, it was a summer camp actually called Anytown. And it taught about privilege and social justice and isms in a way that I probably had never talked about before as a young person. And so that was my gateway drug, I would say, into this work, because as a young person, I was given kind of a passion around thinking about identity and thinking about ways in which we interact with each other based off the things that we are inherently given by God and in the world. And so it sparked my curiosity at a very early age. I stumbled upon, what is called DEI work now, because it wasn't called that when I first started in this business. I've been in higher education now for 25 years. I am a higher ed practitioner, researcher, scholar, academic, and my work for my PhD was rooted in Black women's experiences and leadership, which have, laced and have undergirds of inclusion work. And so I was kind of went to college and was raised up in the late 90s in college and trying to figure out like what I was going to do with my life, and figured out that kind of staying at college and educating folks around what it means to be an individual in this world was super important to me. And so I would say that I stumbled upon this work. This work chose me. I didn't choose it. And that I'm still doing this work to this day. I have kind of transitioned from working on a college campus. So I worked on college campus for 25 years. Now I work for a company called Education Advisory Board, where I do consulting, training, best practice research for corporations and for what we call the P through 20 landscape. So all the way from preschool to postgraduate work. So we work with K through 12 institutions and higher education institutions. And now I spend my time traveling and talking about equity. And I also do a lot of HR talent work, similar to what Dr. Thatch was talking about. So my PhD is in higher education leadership with an emphasis in human resources and social justice. So that's just a little bit about me.
All right, thank you. So our next question is, how have you seen DEI efforts evolve in higher education over the years?
I can take this one. Good God, it has evolved hugely, bigly. I would say that it's evolved from this kind of counting narrative to thinking about categories and how are we kind of associating the things in the world with who we are, with really taking deep dives into really unpacking and grappling with complex issues, I would say, which, may have existed on the front end, I would say, of this conversation, but I've really seen some intentionality and purposefulness. As we can see, we're talking about socioeconomic diversity now. We're talking about age. I talk about multi-generational workplace now with colleagues and with different folks. We're talking about spirituality more. We're talking about gender and how gender is so complex. We weren't talking about those things at first when I would say when we first stumbled upon like social justice work. And I feel like people's appetite for those conversations have changed. And I would say that I do note that I have the privilege of education, of having, spaces where I can talk with talk with others about these topics a lot. But I definitely think that we've evolved and the conversations have gotten more complex and I would dare to say more intentional and purposeful. I mean, we see that in the ways in which we are being entertained. I mean, everybody's talking about Sinners and the layers of that movie. I would definitely say that there were not movies that were, unpacking identity like we are today. So that is a positive thing that where I've seen it evolve.
Yeah, I want to jump in and just add to that briefly. For me, as a professor, I'm seeing these layers that Dr. Ebony just spoke about, being other administrators realizing that they exist. So, for example, I was asked out of pure shock, I was asked by one of the universities that I support to create a curriculum for the race, gender, and public policy course, which would be a requirement for students getting their master's in public administration. So basically understanding that there are layers, that race and gender affects their curriculum, affects what they're learning. So that's really all I wanted to add. And honestly, I was absolutely shocked that this mostly white university, one of the universities I teach, they wanted a course on race and gender. And I think they may have still only had maybe a handful of students take the course. But they understood that they needed it. So that's some of the changes I've seen.
I want to speak to this as well. Unfortunately, mine is kind of on the opposite viewpoint or opposite that opposition that I've seen. So in the last 4 or 5 years, I saw a lot of efforts come out of. So I'm in North Carolina, so a lot of my work was in the UNC systems, which is our public education system down in North Carolina. But a lot of changes were happening in terms of programming and policy, definitely since 2020 and everything that unfolded with George Floyd. However, even prior to our current presidential administration, since a lot of things were being rolled back, so some of these initiatives that had taken place were starting to no, they're no longer doing these things. And I've already seen, even in my program that I just recently will be graduating from next Thursday. Um, they're already going to making some changes to the type of coursework that you can do, the different buzzwords and different things that you can utilize and use. So it'll, and in North Carolina, we have a lot of historically Black colleges. Thank you. A lot of historically Black colleges down here in North Carolina. So it's going to be interesting to see how the UNC systems are making these requirements to roll back all these DEI initiatives when you have all of these HBCUs in the area that were built on DEI, right? Even before DEI, again, like we've been talking about DEI being an actual terminology. So that's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. But it has been unfortunate to see all this change happening in this 4 to 5 years, and then to see these things being walked back just in the last year or two.
All right, thank you. So I have our next question. What are the biggest threats to DEI in higher education today?
I'll start with that one. So some of the biggest threats is the misunderstanding of what DEI is. So often, I'm sure all of us on this call have experienced being called a DEI hire, or you're only in that place because you needed to check a box. But when you think about higher education, nothing or no one fits neatly into a box, right? Because everyone, thinking about intersectionality, all of us has varying different identities that intersect with each other. And so one of the biggest threats is that, like I talked about in the beginning, that single narrative. Those who yield the finances and the power do the narrative, right? Like Zora Whitley talked about, like with George Floyd and all that coming about, right? You saw the buzzwords DEI, Black Lives Matter. That upset a lot of folks who were like, oh, well, wait, now they're getting their just due. Now they're becoming more educated. If you want to keep people oppressed, you take things away from them, like education. And you're like, oh, well, you saw with Harvard, like all the people suing to, oh, well, they're giving them to black representatives and Black students, when in actuality, the numbers are still the same as they were. Now this legacy emissions, right, are being called into question. But one of the biggest things is, again, it calls into question whether or not higher ed is for who they want it to be for. And so that's why you see the rolling back and repeal. Like when they repealed Roe v. Wade, I looked at one of my colleagues and I said, Brown v. Board is next, because if this is a test, they're going to test to see how far they can push. If they can repeal something as big as Roe v. Wade, they're coming for education, because that is the only way our people and those of marginalized identities have ever been able to get past the struggles and things we've been through. And so again, it's not by design that they're, we're not funding the Women's Center anymore, and we're not funding the Center for Black Culture. I mean, here in West Virginia, our governor passed legislation, executive order, doing away with DEI, causing us to close our DEI offices and other things like that. But it's like, you do realize you just hurt 90% of your white West Virginia women, because that's who it was benefiting. Me and my Blackness and my sorors who live here in West Virginia, we weren't benefiting very well off of any DEI policies. And so one of the things is, like, higher ed is, the threat to it is because there's not an understanding of what it actually is, how it benefits, and how it raises the floor for everyone to have an equitable opportunity. And when we have those that are less than in society who don't have the equitable opportunity, we spend more economic resources and power trying to help them. And when in actuality, DEI is what levels that playing field and raises the ceiling so that we can all reach it. But unfortunately, because folks don't understand what it is, and they understand out of hate what it is, you're seeing this threat to higher education as we know it.
Caprice, I was going to add another thought. I really appreciate that thought, because I totally agree with what Akia is saying. Being that I've been in higher education for as long as I have, one of the things that kind of frustrates me about higher education is how stagnant we can be as the academy, as learners, as educators. We say that the academy is this sandbox of learning for our students, sandbox of learning for ourselves. But I do think that at times we can get in the way of our advancement and in the way of our learning. I think that this paradigm shift right now that we're seeing with them trying to weaponize DEI is a great opportunity actually for us to say, okay, what have we not gotten right with the ways in which we are doing DEI work? What can we do better? How can we further advance this work in a way that it can continue, right? Because what we are seeing is that this kind of shallowness attacks that Akia was, speaking about, but a lot of them, lack depth, they lack breadth, they lack lots of evidence-based things. I think it's a time for us to step back and really think about, okay, where are the gaps that we are seeing in higher education? How can we turn some of these threats around and really advance this work even more so that that way we can be stronger, we can be smarter, we can be proactive rather than being reactive. So I think that we could really use this moment as a paradigm shift for our DEI work.
If I can hop in, I want to acknowledge that we have 4 Black women with doctor in front of their name on this call. And when I think about the threat to DEI in higher education as somebody who sits on a board for an HBCU, I think about the points that Dr. Ramsey and Dr. Simeon made, and Soros, you so eloquently put it. I'm just going to try to sprinkle as much as I can on top. I think about when I was taught, and it's not in history books, but it happened, that when slaves learned how to read, they cut off a foot. And I think about metaphorically what's happening right now is it's cutting off our ability to progress forward. And the fact that there are 4 Black women with doctorates on a call right now, and like, mind you, this isn't the first time I've been around Black women with doctorates, but it's maybe the first time someone watching this has seen 4 Black women with doctorates. And I think about how Sora Akia talked about it's important on how the narrative of DEI is portrayed, because affirmative action got bastardized. The way that we make room for people, it's not taking from anyone. If I went to a wealthy person and said, hey, if I could take your business model and help people around you get exactly what you have and you don't have to do anything, you get to keep your wealth and make everybody else around you wealthy, there wouldn't be an issue. But the narrative of DEI is I'm going to take from you and give it to somebody else who I've painted over a 600-year period or so to be less than you. And so the privilege comes in where I have this, I've always had this, therefore I deserve to keep this and nobody else gets to have it, when the reality is it benefits so much more that everybody has the access and the opportunity. And from someone who's not directly in and hasn't grown up in higher education, but has, obviously I'm a product of it twice, and I get to watch and inspire and so into those who are in higher education now, it's so baffling to me that those who are responsible for higher education are so uneducated on what it needs to progress forward and to grow and evolve. So I think that the threat that is happening right now, just on the outside looking in and kind of on the threshold of the door, is watching people who have never had access succeed without honestly direct help or support. And it threatens the posture. It doesn't threaten the reality. It threatens the posture of people who are not used to seeing this amount of individuals who are different, who are of a local minority, because globally that's not the case, and how much effort is going into keeping us from being in the room when it makes it easier for everyone else who's already in the room to just open the door. So it's just a moment where watching it and being inspired and also sickened by what's going on, because my daughter deserves to have an equal opportunity to get whatever education she wants or does not want. And it shouldn't be up to someone else to decide who does or doesn't get to have that access. So I won't overspeak in this space because I don't want to come across as an expert, because there's 4 women on the call who are. But as someone who has been directly influenced and been a beneficiary, it's almost a hindrance across the board, because there's so much, we'll just say, cross-pollination of all the races, that if you take it from us, eventually you're taking it from yourself. And as I think Dr. Ramsey said this, or maybe Dr. Simeon, and only 2 of y'all talked, so I got to be right one way or another, but to really just sit back and snatch this away just because you can is definitely something worth watching and paying attention to, because higher education is the foundation of where our country kind of started. All the Ivy League schools almost got established as soon as folks came over here, and they weren't established with us in mind. So to come full circle and know that once again, this is another system that we get to benefit from because we survived and we struggled through it, where others kind of just get to walk and flow through. It's interesting, because why I teach, or not, I created a talent acquisition training, right? And a, a point that I make often to people is it's not about looking for the qualifications because that's easy. That's on the job description, right? But when you close your eyes and picture the perfect candidate, the perfect student, the perfect teacher, what does that physically look like and why? I've been a director before. And even when I picture being a director, I don't picture me. I don't picture a black woman. I picture all the white men and the white women that I've seen. And this is not to say they're not qualified, but I was qualified and I didn't even see myself as qualified. So to take this away and just seeing the immediate repercussions of it is it's an obvious sign of where the threats are coming from and what they're going for because it's not an accident, it's not coincidental. But I'll pause for the cause and let the rest of the soror speak. But I just wanted to hop in with that for a second, if that was all right.
All right, thank you. Oh, Dr. DeLatas, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I wanted to thank you, first of all, Sharita. That was just brilliantly said. And it made me think about 3 A's. In my book, The Diversity Lemma, I talk about a 7A framework, but this isn't that. I just heard you say attention, and I heard other people talk about apathy and awareness. So when I think about the biggest threats to DEI in higher education today and in our world, it's us. It's our people. It's us not being and not paying attention. I in 2024, I was on the Chitlin circuit for Project 2025, and I talked about this. I don't know how many of you seen this, no judgment, but this is the playbook. So we always talk about, well, I'm finding about this late, or I didn't know about this, or a lot of times as Black people, and I'm trying to be short, we don't want to know because it's a lot. We have a lot of trauma. We want to put our head in the sand. We have to learn how to pay attention. The main priority of Project 2025 is to kill wokeness. All throughout, it talks about, there's 26 times it talks about anti-wokeness. They're betting on us staying asleep. They're betting on us not paying attention. They're betting on us numbing out. And this is the time we need to print this out and understand the game. For thousands of years, we're late to the game. This is a time for us to get ahead of the game. So that's one of the biggest threats is all of the different things. And I've worked in media, I worked in entertainment. My very first job out of college at 17 years old was Fox News, okay? I saw how they knock you down with information to the point where you're exhausted. So we have to know the game. That's the game, is to wear you out and make you exhausted. But instead, educate ourselves. What's the next step? If you read Project 2025, it tells you step by step what they're going to do. I can give you literal page numbers. Page 561, it talks about the unholy alliance of America's society and how this unholy alliance around civil rights and how the Department of Justice should come after higher education. It says it on page 561 and page 595. They're telling us, but short version, they know or think, and this is where we have an opportunity to prove them wrong. They're like, they're not going to pay attention. They're going to pay attention to, these rap artists and, sports and their next car. And that's how they see us. But this is our chance to wake up and prove them wrong and stay woke.
All right, thank you, sorors. Great conversation. So we have a couple more questions. In the interest of time, we can keep the answers to like 1 or 2 minutes, but we have a couple more questions and feel free to hop in on any of these. So what impact, and I know that everybody can answer this, what impact has the political climate had on DEI efforts in colleges and universities?
I'll jump
Well,
in. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
oh no, I
Go
was
ahead.
just gonna kind of repeat what I was saying earlier. Just down here in North Carolina, we already had like a Republican ran Senate and House. So even before the latest political administration, we already had a lot of changes happening to DEI down here in North Carolina where things were being rolled back, different initiatives were even taken away. So yeah, it just has been a major negative influence and impact of DEI efforts that I've seen here in North Carolina.
So I can say at my job at EAB, I get a big picture of what K through 12 is kind of experiencing from a political perspective and higher education. And I would say politics has always been a through line in higher education in one way or another, right? So we've seen that with different aspects of history. We can see the effects of Gaza and Israel crisis. We can see the effects of what's going on with our government structures. I would also say Canada is actually going through some political strife as well. So people are looking to us to see what we are going to do. And I would say that across the board, I've seen colleges and universities take they've taken various stance kind of across a spectrum. So at first, when all the EOs were coming out, a lot of colleges were in panic mode, thinking that they were going to have to like change everything, changing nomenclatures on websites, all the things. You kind of saw that response, from Columbia. And now you're seeing some higher education institutions taking a step back and thinking a little bit more like, wait a minute, okay, let's try to figure this out and let's see how we can kind of galvanize, which is kind of what we are seeing from Harvard, right? And some of those Big Ten schools that are coming together. I wish that we as higher education institutions would come together more often, not out of like necessity, but out of just being, again, proactive, kind of what Dr. Thatch is talking about. Like with Project 2025, they've laid out this playbook, right? And we are taking this reactive and reactionary stance. So I'm seeing that the climate and the political climate is making folks really think about what are the things that we have in place right now that may come under attack, and how can we think forward, and how can we be more forward thinking and protect some of the ways in which we are trying to educate. And then I do see some higher education institutions are taking the stance of, well, um, the government should not be facilitating or telling us what to do. And that is a lot of the energy that we're seeing. So it's really across the board. I would say some colleges and universities took the stance of trying to like revamp, and then others are really thinking about how can we galvanize.
Dr. Thatch, did you have something to add?
Always have something to add. So really briefly, I've just recently taught a course with 40 international students. They're here on visas, and they're here getting their master's on visas. And I spent the residency that they had to attend. I spent 3 days just pushing and pushing them to use their voice, reminding them of things like the Alien Immigration Act, which will affect them directly. So I just want to remind us and remind whoever's listening, colleges and universities the purpose is academic freedom. The purpose is using your voice, being creative, pushing the envelope. This is where I'm very excited, Harvard pushed back, because even though they have their own history of racism, okay, let's just say, be real, but they understood the assignment. Universities are here, and I tell my students all the time, is here for you to create new things, to innovate, and to push this world, to push this culture. And so to me, the political climate has forced me I'm not playing with my students. Like, you better have a voice, you better have an opinion, because they're coming for you, especially my international students who may not have a visa. Like, you're sitting here, you better speak up. So that's how the political climate has affected DEI efforts. I'm pushing even more. I was looking behind me like, hey, maybe ICE might come in and take me. That's what might happen. But I'm going to speak up, and I'm teaching my students how to speak up. So thank you.
Thank
If I
you.
can jump in real quick, Caprice, just got inspired real quick. I remember reading something on LinkedIn when all the companies in general were either rolling back or showing that they had a genuine stance. And I remember we'll just say the hoopla when folks were like, oh, when people roll back, that's when we know to walk away. And I had an experience, and I remember thinking, I'm more concerned about the people who still say they are and they're not. And so when I look at the colleges and universities and what the political climate has kind of cornered them to do, just watching and observing, it also lets me know who genuinely was down with the effort in the first place, because they're going to continue having that stance versus those who did it because it was sexy in 2020 to say you were down with Black Lives Matter, and it was cool in 2021 to still say you were okay with DEI. But people, some individuals and institutions and companies were waiting for a reason to pull out. And so it's been interesting to watch and see the impact, because for me, it was a filter to a smokescreen. Either you always wanted us to get an education or you never wanted us there in the first place. And that lets me know, okay, well, in the future, if this stays their stance, if this stays how they respond, I know where I don't want to invest funds to send my daughter to go to school, because I know where you stand now. And, you know, Maya Angelou, we all know the phrase, we all know the quote, we feel it coming. When people show you who they are, you believe them. And that's the same for institutions in higher education.
All right. Thank you. So I have our next question. Have you personally encountered or witnessed the DEI higher stereotype, and how has it affected faculty, staff, or students?
I feel like I face that every time someone hears somebody call me Dr. Simeon, especially being from West Virginia. West Virginia is a 98.2%, and that's being generous, white state. And so like I came through the TRIO programs. Without TRIO, I would not be where I am today, without Upper Bound, McNair, Student Support Services. And so it's interesting when I had been interviewing for different positions after becoming Dr. Simeon, a lot of my interviews were like Zoom with my camera off with the committee. And then when I get in person, it's like faces drop. It's like, fix your face. You didn't. First of all, my name is Akia Simeon. That should give it away. I don't know no white women named Akia Simeon or Akia in general. But a lot of times when you come in and you're working in higher ed and you're teaching, people are like, oh, well, where did you get your education from? Doesn't matter. The paper's on the wall. I got it. I did it. Or they question, especially colleagues will question your ability to make decisions. And it's like, I said what I said, and I decided what I decided. I have this skill set. I didn't get here because I happen to be Black. I got here in spite of being a Black woman. I'm in this chair where I sit. For me, most people who know me know my ultimate career goal is university presidency, right? And there's not a lot of women who look like me who are in presidency positions. And nothing against the HBCUs, but people are like, oh, you want to be an HBCU president? Nope, I want to be one at a historically white college university, because that's where change is made, because those colleges set the pace and the course for how other universities are treated, how other have access. And so in most cases, people are shocked to hear doctor, and they're like, oh, what kind of doctor? I'm an academic doctor. Oh, that's a thing, been a thing for hundreds of years since Harvard came to and established in 1692 here in the United States, well, would become the United States of America. But oftentimes it is a challenge, right? When people are like, well, where did you get that information from? I just happen to be Black and smart, and able to speak eloquently with subject verb noun agreement. But in most spaces and places, especially when white colleagues feel threatened by their privilege or their privilege is being checked, they will throw that out there in a minute. They will throw that out there like, oh, they'll question like, well, how did you get here? Like, what was your hiring process like? Things like that. So yeah, it happens. It's an everyday occurrence for me.
I can speak outside of the experience of watching it just happen to Black people, right? Let's talk about the model minority for Asians. And I've watched people of Asian descent struggle because they weren't being helped, because they were assumed to already understand it naturally. And I've seen where there's Black students or Hispanic students or people in general, I mean, Hispanic or Black people in any kind of industry. And it's almost like the opposite, where we come in naturally articulate, naturally okay, and then there's an issue. And I know something I personally dealt with is like, you know, being hired under the assumption that I needed help to develop, and then being seen that I already naturally knew how to lead. I already naturally knew how to do the things. And then it's an issue because I'm not a pet project anymore. And so there's an opportunity where we're not allowed the space and grace to be great naturally. It's like we have to be coached and developed and things like that. And it's interesting to watch just from the perspective of personal experience, observation, and then, you know, just hearing third party, that I can only imagine what that's like as a student. If you need help and people assume you're good, or if you're already good and nobody gives you the credit. Whereas someone can walk in, and when we say like white privilege, let's be very specific, it's white male, non-veteran. So like even white men who are veterans get a little bit more support, right? And so the opportunity is, why is it that we can't be okay? Why can't we be great? Why can't we be recognized and acknowledged? Because once again, coming full circle to the first point, it doesn't take away from anybody else in the room to let people be amazing, to give some recognition, to have a platform like this where individuals can talk. I love that Dr. Simeon said, I want to be at a PWI, because that's where people need to see that this is great. And when I've done community outreach projects for companies, I said, don't just go to the hood. Black kids know that Black greatness exists. We're taught this from a very young age, that even if you don't see yourself on a pedestal, you belong there. We need to go to not, I want to say not the hood. We need to go to like those affluent white neighborhoods and show, let's normalize white children seeing Black excellence. So it's not a shock to them when they see a Sharita or a Whitley or an Ebony, a Kia, a Tila, a Caprice. Like, this should not be an anomaly that we're smart and we're educated and we're great. The only reason that there's not more Black people or people of color in higher education is not lack of qualification. It's not lack of access. It's lack of access. I'm sorry, not lack of qualification. It's lack of access and lack of opportunity. You assume I don't belong in the room, therefore you don't give me a chance to get there. You don't give me a chance to stay there. And God forbid I stay there, and now I'm a threat and I'm fighting for my life to be in that room every single day. And so it's an opportunity to really just sit down and once again challenge the thought on why an intellectually equipped Black person is still a shock in 2025.
Thank you. So I'm going to do our last question, and so everybody please answer. What can individual student, faculty, administrators do to push back against anti-DEI narratives and combat the stigma surrounding DEI-focused hiring and leadership roles?
Okay, I'll jump in just to make it quick. I would say reframe, document, build coalitions, and know the playbook. So just making sure, I'm going to put it in the chat. I put in the chat the Project 2025 link. It's free. You can just download it. Make sure you have data, tell your stories. And I wanted to kind of to answer the other question, build coalitions. Don't do this work alone. So I am blessed and also privileged. One of the universities that I work for is owned by a Black man, President Robert Brown. So get to know who are the Black people leading in higher ed and be a part of their coalition. And then, there's strength in numbers. And that's it.
I'd like to build off of what Dr. Thatch says. I think that we continue to block out some of the noise and the white noise and recognize it as white noise, because this whole kind of, narrative around a DEI hire and a stigma around diversity, equity, inclusion, that it's just come about. And so I feel like as long as we continue to speak to what I was speaking to earlier as well, figure out ways that we can continue to strengthen the gap areas that we have with doing equity and social justice and inclusion work. What are the things that we could do better? Where are things where we can advance thought and continue to educate ourselves and not bury our heads in the sand like we have done in the past? But also, where are there ways where you can continue to call out and use your voice? Students, faculty, staff, if there's ever a time for you to use your power and your voice, it's now, because college and higher education is becoming a socioeconomic choice and a class choice. And so I think that folks really need to understand the kind of paradigm shift that we're in right now, to where we can really be influential and make a space for Sharita's daughter. And what are we going to do to make sure that that next generation is just as capable and able and able to push back in ways using facts and not fiction?
If I can, I'm stop saying if I can jump in. I'm on the panel, so obviously I can talk. If I can just take a note to the allies, those who have deemed themselves as allies, like, we didn't call you one, you said you are one. I just want to preface this with having privilege is not a bad thing. That's another part about DEI that people get twisted. Like, we're not saying because you're white, you're a bad person. We're saying that because you're white, you have a voice that's easily heard and easily believed more than somebody else. So if you're an ally in the room and you're looking around and Dr. Thatch can't finish a sentence because John wants to keep interrupting her, use your space, because we get easily weaponized when we stand up for ourselves. That's why you keep seeing those things that say we sitting this one out, because we put forth 400 years of energy. We put forth the last 60, 70 years of trying to make a better space. We've been doing the work, and to the whole point, we're not even the primary beneficiaries of the work we're doing. So if you're in a room and you're an ally, you call yourself an ally, which means that you sitting when you got your Black friends at home or your friends of color at home. It's easy to text Sharita and say, I'm here for you, girl. I'm going to pray for you. I got you. Black Lives Matter. No, I want you to tell Susie, Kim, Brittany, I want you to tell the people who look like you that I'm important. I want you to advocate for me when I'm in the room, and I want you to be louder for me when I'm not in the room. The point of having privilege is leveraging it. And it's not just for you, because guess what? Whether you use it or not, you got it. So being responsible, being the steward of the lives around you, because telling me you're cool, blacking out your profile picture on Instagram, not shopping at Target on one day, that's not going to make the long-term difference that you think it is. Now, is it impactful for one day? Yes. But this is an everyday choice. And for the allies who are like, I want to say something, but I don't want them to be mad at me. They've been mad at us for a long time. You'll be all right. So if you want to wear the ally t-shirt, you got to bear the ally cross and think about the people who are not in the room intentionally, and make it uncomfortable for those in the room to talk when they're not in the room. It's called stakeholder management. If you know how to do business to business operations, if you know how to do workforce planning, if you're in human resources, guess what? Human resources is a byproduct of the civil rights movement. You have a job because somebody was not treated fairly. And if you're in human resources, especially in higher education, and you're like, I'm just doing what they told me to do, well, you about to be doing yourself out of a job. So if you want to be selfish, stand up for everybody else so you can stay employed.
Yeah, I would also say leverage students. Like, I work in student affairs, so students are my primary business in higher ed. And I often remind my colleagues, COVID showed us without students, we can't turn the lights on at our institutions. And our students of today are really hungry for that knowledge and that information. They're questioning theory. They're asking more questions in the classroom. And so educating them, oftentimes, like my great grandmother's 103 years old and still very spicy. And she always says the thing that her generation and others messed up on is they did not educate the youth. Right? It's almost like we got these rights, we got these things, and then the education still didn't get passed on as to why we should still fight for these things. And so, but also understanding that this is a game of chess, not checkers. So you must know your opponent's move before they make it. There have been times in the institution I work at, my students like, well, we didn't see you at this event. Don't mistake my presence physically not being there for me not fighting for you. Because thinking about the Underground Railroad, if people really knew who the true conductors really were, things wouldn't have got done with the women's suffrage. I mean, right? It was 100 plus years later that our sorority got credit for what we did for those women and how our efforts actually got them their right to vote, because they forgot about us for, a couple of generations like we were never there. But it was because we had to be sometimes stealthy in the background. And so, because, as a faculty member and an adjunct, I'm there voluntarily at this institution. They will tell me that in a minute. You are a voluntary employee. We're not holding you here. You want to still be employed. This is what you do. So you learn their game. You learn the playbook of Project 2025. You learn the policies. You learn the procedures. And then you teach your institution. You teach your students. You teach other faculty and staff, while all the time not showing them your hand, right? Like, I play dominoes with my husband. He's yells at me all the time, baby, I can see your dominoes. Well, I can't hold them all in my hands. And so sometimes we're guilty as a people of showing our hand because we're so kind. And so if we're going to push back against this, we can't give the whole playbook away. We're going to study their playbook. We're going to learn our opponent's move before they make it. So when they make it, we've educated our students, we've educated our allies, we've educated other faculty, staff members. And lastly, we have to know who we can trust. That's what's happened to most of our movements, and they were infiltrated because not everybody deserves a seat at the table. You can come come to the after brief meeting, but sometimes not everybody needs to be at the table because they may not be able to do the work that needs to be done. Like with my students, I know which students I can encourage and which ones in that way I cannot. Right? Which ones will fold like a paper plate in a windstorm as soon as administration asks them something, which ones who are going to hold steady and know that we're doing this for a greater cause. So part of encouraging is understanding the abilities and strengths of those we're encouraging as well at our institutions or wherever we're working at, so that our plans don't get derailed, so that our movement doesn't get derailed, and ensuring that these things continue on for generations. I have an 8-year-old and I would like for her to be able to choose an institution. I would like for her to be equitably educated, but if some people get their way, that may not be the case for her because people say we they don't want wokeness in our country. So we have to be very strategic about how we have these critical conversations and when we have them and how we train and how we equip people to address some of the issues we're facing.
I think the sorors, you all have already said everything that needs to be said. The only thing that I would add is just being clear on your why, because what we I think really haven't said today is this work can be very emotionally taxing. So staying grounded is very crucial. It can also be very isolating, especially when we talk about working in predominantly white spaces and maybe nobody else in your department wants to do the work that you're doing. And I think one of the things that was helpful for me when I was working at a PWI is being intentional about the relationships that I'm building, being intentional about not being isolated and being in spaces with others who seek out and also support and want to do this work. So just make sure that you're taking care of yourselves, whether that be through therapy or whatever your self-care activities are. Those are going to be important, that you have your community and that you're not in isolation as you continue to do this DEI work.
All right. That was our last question. Do we have any questions from the audience? You can feel free to put them in the chat. Yes, you
Skylar
can.
has a question.
Go ahead, Skylar.
I think while Skylar's typing in the chat, Ebony raised a hand. I think
Erica.
they can come off mute, right? I mean, Erica. I'm sorry.
Yes. Go ahead, Erica.
Good evening, Source. Thank you so much for all of your insight and putting this space together. It was really good intel and information. My question, you all spoke a lot today about coalition building, solidarity, and sticking together. As someone who has been at both PWIs, HBCUs, and currently at a PWI, what is your advice with regard to standing in solidarity with others, particularly other Black people who tend to be gatekeepers? It's been my experience, especially in the PWI, specifically the Ivy League space, that there are so many Black gatekeepers where they feel as though when more people who look like them get in the room, their uniqueness would dwell. And so they gatekeep, they intentionally sabotage, they make sure that others who look like them can't get in the room. And I specifically seen this time and time and time again with Black gay men. And so when we talk about gatekeepers of our own community, what advice do you have? Because after many years of witnessing this, part of me is just like, I'm not lifting as I climb with that subgroup of people. But then there's another part of me that wants to give grace and the benefit of the doubt and just say that they need more awareness and education. So just curious on your thoughts there.
I'd say you can have grace and realistic expectations. My dad taught me when I was younger, and my father was a unique Black man. So charge this to his head and not his heart. He is no longer with us, so charge it to nothing actually. But I remember him telling me about crabs in a barrel. And I had this understanding of that when I was younger until I had an epiphany about it like 3 years ago. crabs climb over each other, right? When you pull one out, the other ones are holding on, trying to either pull the one back or get out with the one being pulled out. And I had this thought when I was at a beach one day that crabs don't belong in a barrel. That's why they're trying to get out. So I remember this book called My Grandmother's Hands, which isn't necessarily about higher education and DEI, but we got to keep in mind that our trauma is genetic. And so some people are doing their DNA program. We've all been taught many, many moons ago not to like each other. Our history erased when we were pushed on a boat. And so a lot of us are relearning how to do community where we were pulled out of what we naturally had. And so I agree with giving grace and space, but we got to keep in mind that we're all fighting this war together, and a lot of us think the war is with each other. And so do your best to, let them come and let them go, but you got to hold your ground to be one of the people that somebody else can look up to, because we can't control nobody else's efforts. We can control anybody else's representation of their actions, but we got to keep fighting that fight, and you're going to get disappointed. You're talking to a Black woman who was selected to be laid off by another Black woman because I outperformed my boss. So it's going to happen, but you got to keep in mind that a lot of this is genetic. And if you don't wake up, like Dr. Thatch talked about, you're going to do what you're programmed to do until you unlearn and reprogram. And so some of us, like as a Christian in my faith, I know that there's a lot of folks who will never open the Bible, but they'll see how I live my life. And I think that we got to live a life that looks worth advocating for, so other people who look like us see the risk and know that it's outweighed by the value.
The only thing that I will add to what Sharita just said, which was amazing, is that this has been going on for a very long time. And I think also it has to do with the gender dynamics of higher education, with there being so many more Black women in our field. And shout out to the LGBTQIA Two-Spirit community. But there is a rub here that we don't want to talk about, okay? And it is very competitive. It does have roots in the trauma that Sharita just explained. But one of the things that I've been doing is making sure that you are grounded, because higher ed in general, we are just a gatekeeping community. We don't want to share our information. But what I would suggest to you to do is to always show up and stick to your values. And if somebody pushes against that, then you have the right and you have the option to call them to the carpet, right? To have those conversations. And I try to have those conversations, not in front of everyone, but I've had to have some of those necessary calling outs and a calling in, right? It's a calling in sometimes that has to happen in the most loving way that I can. But it is difficult, and I don't know the exact solution to this issue, but it's one that I've been grappling with and chewing on for a very long time, because most of the women that I interact with, either in my friendships, in my personal life, professional life, are dealing with this right now. And it really frustrates me that it comes from folks that look like us in our community, where we are supposed to be, working together. So sometimes you're not going to be in solidarity with everybody, right? Everybody, I'm not preaching kumbaya, but what I am saying is that you have to be true to who you are in the moment. And sometimes it's a calling in that needs to happen at that time.
Thank you. So Skylar's my sibling, by the way. So thank you for being here, Skylar. So they said they go by they, them pronouns. Thank you. The planes were falling out the sky because of the DEI establishments. This is what they said they heard. So they heard that the plane, we know that Trump said this, that the planes were falling out the sky because DEI hires. And I wanted to know what y'all think about that, and wanted to know how many more things y'all feel like would be affected by this attack on DEI.
I mean, it's not by design that he said that, right? Some people take it as like he's this buffoon. They don't know what he's doing. He's very strategic, right? As a social worker, it's almost like it's sort of like people are like, oh, he's mentally imbalanced. Not necessarily, because this is what a narcissist does. This is what somebody who's at war with you does. They kind of gaslight. And so, again, because folks don't know what DEI truly means and how it benefits, right? And what it does, people would believe that because, again, if you want to keep people oppressed and ignorant, they don't read. And so you don't provide the adequate information. And it did come out that the pilot of the helicopter happened to be a Black pilot. But then when you read his resume, there's no way. But then it came out later, oh, well, the company had voluntarily grounded their helicopters because there was something wrong with the mechanics of it. But that's not what was told. It was like, oh, because people with learning disabilities and things like that. Because at one point, DEI was only attack on people of color. Now he's coming for everybody who's not rich, white like him. He's coming for folks with neurodiversity. He's coming for people of color. He's coming for women. He's coming for poor Blacks and whites, Hispanics, and everybody else. And so when you hear those rhetorics, you have to question, what is the purpose and the meaning behind it? Why would someone excite others? That's like us being in a crowded theater and me yelling fire. I know that's going to cause an issue because people are going to panic. Even if they don't smell no smoke, people are going to panic and run. And so we are a society that is very reactive to things that are indifferent because, again, we think something's going to be taken from us, right? President Johnson said it best, even though he was one of our most prolific racist presidents we ever had. He said, if you can convince the lowest white man or woman that they are better than the highest echelon and richest Black person, they will take out everything in their pockets. They'll give you their vote and everything. That's exactly what our current president is doing. He is able to manipulate and gaslight to people thinking they're going to lose everything. So for him to say, oh, it's because of DEI. We didn't have these issues before. So if it really would truly was DEI, we think in terms of theory, these things would continuously happen year after year, time after time. So if you think about it intellectually, like we do on this call, we know that that can't be true. Like if A plus B, like theory doesn't allow for what he said to be true. But because people are like, oh, because there's a Black pilot or there's Black air traffic controllers or somebody who didn't learn as well, maybe they have a little touch of dyslexia, right? The amount of tests you have to go through just to be an air traffic controller, there is no way a person with any type of impediment, even to be a pilot, right? You can't have any health issues to be a pilot just because of the nature of the job, right? But because people are not well studied, right? They have not been well informed, and they're looking for someone to blame because my life, the economy is bad. I need something to blame. And so he uses that rhetoric to be like, oh, because of DEI, your kids don't have an equitable opportunity at school. No, it's because all the school vouchers are going to the rich white children whose parents can afford the other half of the bill. The plane didn't crash. The crash didn't happen because it happened to be a Black pilot or an air traffic controller that had a learning disability. The helicopter malfunctioned and crashed into a plane. It was an accident. It happened because the company was trying to skirt and still make money, knowing that helicopter shouldn't have been in the sky in the first place. But people don't want to hear that. They want to hear something that makes them feel better. They want to be entertained. And it makes me feel better to know that, well, because of DEI, I have to count the cheese and the crackers before I send my child to school. No, you have to do that because of inflation, not because anything a person of color or a person with a marginalized identity has done. And so when you shout excited utterances like that, people will listen because it makes more sense to them to hate and to be indifferent towards others rather than to ask what makes sense and what actually is true.
Thank you. For this next, we have one more question. Dr. Nicole, yes, go ahead.
Hello. Thank you, everyone, for just all the information that you've been providing and having this discussion. Sorry if it's loud. I'm in a hotel room. But I wanted to see, what have you all been doing with different things that are going on in higher education when you're actually starting to see where the things like I've read about in the books of being the only Black person in the space and what can happen when you start seeing that they're gatekeeping or you have others that are not trying to assist or trying to hold back other Black people from getting positions in higher education. How do you maintain your, I guess, peace? I find myself getting upset as I'm seeing things happening. And so how do you maintain just not showing it on your face, but moving forward and continuing to do the work of DEI, even when you get frustrated and want to just leave?
I'm going to have Dr. Whitley Grant. Can you start off with answering that one for me, and then Dr. Thiele Thatch?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things is giving yourself grace, right? Because it's hard to say, let me show up in this space and just pretend like these things are not affecting me. And you know how even in the research that I did, we talked about how Black women, we just have these faces that we make to each other anyway in just terms of communication. So give yourself grace and understand like it's okay for something to affect you and bother you. That's when I think community building is so important. I know when I first got my first job at a PWI, it was important for me to kind of seek out what are the resources that are available at my institution for Black people. So I ended up joining, we had the African American faculty staff organization and finding those like-minded individuals in your different departments because it is going to be those situations where people in your departments, even folks who look like you, might be the ones that are holding you back. I also think mentorship is very important as well. Even as you think about even in a space like this, right? Whoever you might be able to connect with on this call or from one of the participants. So just being intentional about establishing those relationships with people who can build you up, even when other folks might be trying to break you down. I also, when I talked about before, like seeking out therapy. So I have a lot of clients who do come to me because I have this expertise in racial trauma, and we really talk about what are some self-care practices that you might be able to do to kind of combat these things that they come up, even when the trauma is coming from folks again who look like you and not just from folks who might be in those dominant identities or spaces. So I think all of those things are going to be ways that you can kind of work through and combat these issues that come up because they're going to continue to come up, unfortunately, as you continue to pursue your career higher ed.
Yeah, I want to jump in just for the sake of time. So thank you so much for that question, Dr. Nicole. I wrote this book, The Diversity Dilemma, because I was having a dilemma. I start the book off talking about how I am angry. And so we have five basic emotions: mad, sad, glad, afraid, and embarrassed. You're going to be mad at some point, but this is what I want to say again without getting to a long soliloquy. It's okay. That's how we get things done. Sometimes we're mad. Here's what iron sharpens iron. We know this, especially as deltas. Iron sharpens iron. And so we have to use everything in our toolbox, emotional intelligence, our education, our sisters. And we've been talking about the playbook. We've been talking about the game. Recognize you're angry, get help for yourself. In my book, I talk about the 7 R's, which is rest, restoration, relaxation, all that. Take care of yourself. Make sure your cup is overflowing to the freaking saucer. And then you give them what's in the saucer, right? You exercise that professional courage, and then you're ready. You know what made you angry, understand why it made you angry. It made you angry because it's a microaggression. It made you angry because they're lying. I don't know. Understand what it is. Now you're ready to tackle it. You're ready to get your people, and you're going to have a strategy. You're not just going to be feelings, emotions, and anger. You're going to be strategic. But yeah, I'm mad, and I'm about to go for a walk. I'm about to call my sisters. I'm about to call my sorors, and now I'm coming back with a plan of action because guess what? I'm going to use the HR. I'm going to use HR. I'm going to use the employee handbook. I'm going to use a lawyer. I was talking to one of my lawyer friends. They said when they go low, we get lawyers. Not we go high. We go when they go low, attorneys. Okay, so that may be what you need to do, but you take a step back, take care of yourself, and then reflect. James Baldwin said to be a Negro in America is to be angry all the time. If you're not angry, something ain't right because you see your brother, your husband, your people are hurting all around. You see the injustice. But I think about also Martin Luther King. How in the world did he stay calm and strong? I think about our sorors, Madrie Penn White, one of our founders. What the world were they doing? So we got all of this. We got all of this power, and we just use everything we have and know that you're loved, know that you're blessed. They don't define who you are. They don't give you your value in higher education or out other place. So thank you for letting me answer that question because that's the passion. That's the why I do the work I do because I want you to know it's a lie. And you do have the right to be angry. We've been taught for so long, put your poker face on, don't show them anything. Don't trust them, don't show them. But it's been to our detriment because we hold this in our body and we're getting sick. We're having heart attacks. I just lost a friend this week, just had cardiac arrest and died that day. we can't continue to let this happen. We have to use our voice, use our network, use our family. And I will go on for an hour. Call me, Dr. Nicole. I'll put my email, my information in the chat. Thank you very much.
All right. That was amazing. This was amazing. This was amazing. That's all I can say. This is my first time doing something like this, and all the insight that I got, I'm pretty sure that everybody else got. This went really well. I kind of went a little off script. I put two things in here. One is a survey monkey. Just let us know how we did. And another one is the diversity dilemma raffle. So I am going to give one lucky person this book. And so I don't know. Like I said, I went off script because all of that information was just amazing. This is a field that I want to go into, and so this is why I didn't speak. I'm gonna have one more question. Pieces of Us by Us. That is my family, by the way. If you're gonna, you gonna put something in the chat?
No, I'm going to speak. I was fighting mute and fighting the video. I don't have a question. I just wanted to give a heartfelt congratulations and thank you and commend you guys for such a powerful, amazing, and insightful segment. I'm proud of each and every one of you all. I learned quite a bit, and I just want to give a special shout out to my daughter Caprice, who put this together. So thank you all, and congratulations, baby. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. So thanks, Dad. And then I'll call you after this. But I just have a little closing words. Thank you all for joining us for this important conversation on the attacks against DEI in higher education and the impact of the DEI Higher narrative. This discussion has highlighted the challenges we face, but more importantly, it has reinforced the power of advocacy, representation, and collective action. A special thank you to our incredible panelists, each and every last one of you, for sharing their expertise, lived experiences, and strategies for pushing back against anti-DEI rhetoric or rhetoric. I don't know how to say it, sorry. But your insights have been invaluable, and we appreciate the work you do every day to advance equity in your spaces. To our participants, we appreciate your engagement, reflections, and commitment to this conversation. These issues affect us all, and it is through discussions like these that we can continue to challenge harmful narratives and drive meaningful change. This webinar was brought to you by the Black Girls Guide to College, an initiative dedicated to ensuring that Black girls and women are empowered, supported, and prepared to navigate higher education. We encourage you to stay connected, continue these conversations, and take action in your own institutions and communities. Thank you again for being part of this dialogue. Let's keep pushing for a future where DEI is not just defended, but strengthened and sustained. Have a great rest of your day. So, if you don't have anything to do after this, just do like a quick debrief after this. You all will also be receiving this book. I don't know if you ordered it yourself, let me know, but you all will also be receiving Dr. Thatcher's book. So to everyone else, our participants, thank you so much.
You want them to fill out that Survey Monkey, Caprice?
Yes, please fill out the Survey Monkey. Let us know how you felt like this went.
It's in the chat, y'all.
It's in the chat, yes. And shout out to Sharita for doing the Survey Monkey.
The data analysis in me had to throw one in there.
Give me 1 second.
Caprice, before I forget, I'm not sure if you bought copies of the book, but I have copies, so don't buy any.
Okay, well, I wanted to support you. I haven't bought them yet. I just bought my own.
Okay, I got copies and codes for Audible. So let's connect for all the panelists. You have an autographed copy because I want to make sure I sign it. And yay. And then our soror Janae Coleman is the voice of the book. And it just came out on Audible, and I have codes so you can download that for free. So please.
It's still recording, Caprice. I don't know if you want it to still record.
Oh, thank you for letting me know that. Let me just put
my former president, Dr. Manisha Mitlow, still on. Bye.
Let me stop the recording.